Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on this triumphant Tuesday for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed YouTube video. And today, we are going to be talking about one of our favorite altcoins. This is going to be a very heavily, technically, price-orientated video. And we're going to be showing you why we believe you should be bullish on Hedera HBAR, and a major move is underway. We're going to be starting the video off by talking about the space more broadly, because in order for Hedera to do well, we want the forces of the cryptocurrency market to be working in our favor. So we want a generally uptrending market, which we think we are on the cusp of. Bitcoin has been pulling back since March. Today, we've seen some really interesting price movement. It's shot all the way up to 68K. It's essentially on the cusp of completing the pullback that it's been in since March. And it's just trying to break free from this sort of broadening descending channel. Now, if Bitcoin does well, it's very much the tide that rises and sinks all ships. And when we look at the total market caps, they're very much also destined for higher prices, higher price levels that is ultimately going to see the altcoin market rise and thus Hedera Hashgraph. So we're going to be starting the video off there, talking about the space more broadly and the technical confluence that we're getting in regards to the direction it's heading in. Then we're going to be looking at Hedera on a kind of macro perspective, a big time frame perspective, and talking about where Hedera is in regards to how markets typically move, the cycles that they go through. In our market mastery course, we like to teach that markets move in 4 phases. You have an accumulative phase, a basing phase, an uptrending phase, a topping phase, and a descending or a downtrending phase. Hedera Hashgraph very much just in phase 1. Ultimately, we do think it will, in line with the broader direction of the markets, which we're going to cover at the start, head into phase 2. And we actually have a technical target on the smaller time frames in regards to this falling wedge that we will be looking at towards the end of the video. And don't worry, guys, we're going to show you plenty of examples of what it is we're calling for, of what it is we're looking at, and ultimately the journey that we think is Hedera Hashgraph is now about to embark on. But as promised, let's start things off with the tide, which is Bitcoin. It rises and sinks all ships. As it rises, your altcoin market will overperform. As it falls, your altcoin market will also overperform, but to the downside. And that's really what we've seen. That's what altcoins have been suffering from. A lack of Bitcoin strength recently. They've overperformed it to the downside. They will likely overperform it to the upside. In regards to how long an alt season typically takes to start post-halving, it's round about 225 days, that 200-day mark, and then it starts to rock and roll. We think you're on the cusp of it, and that's largely going to be signified or start on the back end of Bitcoin kind of completing its corrective phase and embarking on that broader journey that, of course, we have a number of technical targets for. First of all, just straight off the bat here, there's 4 technical reasons to be bullish on Bitcoin. One is the fact that you are in a very much intact uptrend. The trend is your friend. Don't bet against it until you see reason or signs of it changing. So expect continuation in the trend. You've got this inverse head and shoulders that we're looking at in much the same way we were looking at that inverse head and shoulders in the sort of 20K range. It took us to 41. We're now looking for this inverse head and shoulders. You can see your left shoulder, head, right shoulder here. That is ultimately going to take you to that 151K range. We've got a bull flag that takes you to 130. And of course, that broader cup and handle pattern. It's very common. We cover this a lot in the daily, that when you approach a high, you'll put a toe above it and then you'll consolidate or come back in this sort of descending manner, which is how pullbacks are in an uptrend before you then set up for that continuation. And we're on the cusp of that. And today was another attempt at it. Eventually, you keep knocking on that ceiling, you will find the hatch. So we think Bitcoin is very much going to permission the space to move. When we look at the total cryptocurrency market cap, we think this is going to double in the not too distant future. 6 months or so. I don't even think it's going to take that long, in my opinion. This is ultimately a bull flag that, again, you're on the cusp of breaking out of. Today, we've had an attempt at it. Of course, we found resistance as resistance. But again, you keep knocking on the ceiling. Eventually, you're going to find that hatch that takes you through it. And we do have a target based on this bull flag that takes you to 4.1 trillion. The entire cryptocurrency space is currently at 2.2. When we look at the total market cap excluding Bitcoin, we're seeing a very, very similar thing. We also have a bigger technical target that sees this eventually. This could be the bull market prediction for the total cryptocurrency market cap, excluding Bitcoin, to around about $3.7 trillion. You're currently at 900 billion. And when we look at total 3, which is everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, we also have upside targets for this, nearly a doubling in that. So Hedera is going to do well in that environment as part of the cryptocurrency space, which we have a lot of technical reasons to suggest is going up. That's one good reason to be bullish on Hedera. It's going to move with the space broadly. This is others. Everything outside of the top 10, we think this is going to 1.9 trillion. Again, this is actually broken out of its channel. The altcoin market really seems to be moving. And you can see this is broken out and has actually already retested it as previous resistance flipped into support. So when we talk about the forces that, or the things that we can look at in regards to, okay, we've got technical targets for Bitcoin to the upside, and we think you're in a broader uptrend, so it's going to go higher. It's a tide that rises and sinks all ships. When we look at the total market caps, of course, they're in line with Bitcoin as a tide that rises and sinks all ships, and we've got technical targets to the upside for them. That's an environment that sees altcoins do well, and certainly Hedera, in our opinion, and we really do think it's going to play catch up. When we look at Hedera on its own technical merit, and we're going to be talking weekly time frame here, we're going to get into the smaller time frames in just a second. Hedera is in, again, we like to teach that the market's moving 4 phases. Wyckoff taught this, although most people only look at Wyckoff's accumulate and distribute, they miss out the kind of importance of that, and they always go in the small time frames. It was never meant for small time frames. It was always meant for the macro view of markets. If you look at the Wall Street cheat sheet, it very much aligns, but has the emotions attached to how markets move. They move in this wave-like fashion. Hedera is currently in an accumulative stage, in our opinion, and ultimately, based on this pattern that we're going to come on to in just a second, is very likely to sort of start making its way to the upper band of the range that it's been in whilst it's been accumulating, take that and then embark on a broader uptrend. Again, very much in line with, and why we spent the first half of the video, or the first little bit of the video, looking at the big picture in crypto, Bitcoin, the total market caps, is that the environment is there for Hedera to do exactly this. It's been a volatile ride. We've been accumulating throughout the whole of this, but I think history is on our side. If we look at the likes of Robinhood, this was another one called by, it very much did a similar thing. It based, had these big volatile swings. I mean, it went all the way from 13 all the way down to 7. I mean, this is a stock that saw nearly a 40% drop. Crypto is an amplification of that before it then eventually broke out of phase 1 into phase 2. Hedera is about to embark on a very similar journey, in my opinion. And this is the sort of, we're seeing that accumulative phase be very much confirmed, that accumulation be confirmed. The next phase is an uptrend. So the space generally is heading in that direction. Hedera on its own merit is very much setting up for that. And on the short time frame, which we're going to come on to, it looks even more likely that, now is the time to be bullish on Hedera, in my opinion. So when we look at Robinhood, this is a clear example of a phase 1 base into a phase 2 breakout. This is Alchemy Technologies. It's irrelevant really what it is, but you can see this is your base here, and then your breakout, your clearing of resistance. I'll actually put the resistance level down here. Your retest into a broader uptrend. Hedera's really got this to come. You've got the likes of Galaxy Digital. This is, of course, one we were watching. You can see a very clear sort of, range base here, lots of chopping, and then you get that assertion of the broader trend. Phase 1 accumulation into phase 2. And this is a really quick one I'll show you also, which is American Superconductor Corporation. You can see. And Hedera is here, and it has, we think, a broad, long uptrend ahead of it, and we think the space generally is going to continue higher. Hedera, one of the few coins in sort of green today, with all Bitcoin's volatility. It's kind of shaking the tree, if you will, and all the leaves falling off in regards to the altcoins. So there are a few examples of sort of phase 1s that led to phase 2. We actually called many of these, like Robinhood, obviously Galaxy, American Superconductor, and of course we were looking at this one in its phase 1 state, and it's progressed since. We're calling the same thing for Hedera. And when we look, so the sort of vision and journey here is that it is essentially going to try and find its way to the upside and then embark on that broader uptrend, hopefully setting up technical patterns that we can sort of predict higher prices moving forwards. In regards to it doing that, on the smaller time frames, I'm very much of the opinion that HBAR is in a falling wedge pattern. Like many altcoins, we've spoken about it in regards to looking at yesterday, those 15 altcoins that are all showing similar signs. This is very much a falling wedge. In fact, let's throw up a different chart, perhaps. Something like Coinbase or something. Just to show you what it is we're looking at for HBAR. You can see this is very much the pattern that we're looking at. in regards to what we're seeing for Hedera currently. And you've broken out of this. Now, we're going to show this schematic of a falling wedge. This is a great schematic of a falling wedge because it really highlights the three impulses that are very typical in regards to this pattern. It's very common, just like we see with Hedera or like we saw with ETC, which is very similar, that you sort of form a falling wedge on the back end of upside price movement, very often after a kind of blow off, like what we saw with Hedera, obviously on the back end of the BlackRock news. Then what happens is interest wanes, the volatility restricts only to expand once again. And this is the kind of notion of these three impulses: big impulse, smaller impulse, and then you get this kind of explosion out of it. You know, Ethereum Classic, I know many of you aren't interested in this asset, but what it is a great technical sort of view of a falling wedge. You can see big impulse, second impulse, third impulse, sort of bottoming out, and then you get an expansion. That is essentially what I think is to come for Hedera Hashgraph. And you can see these impulses in here. You can see this big impulse, smaller impulse, third impulse, bottoming out, sort of forming a bit of a floor here. And then you get a breakout of it before you see that continuation. Even in regards to this pullback, it's a very textbook falling wedge-like structure. You can see breakout, pullback. You get the first inklings. And once you sort of start to clear this, you'll really start to get rocking and rolling. And that is ultimately what is going to see HBAR get back to the upper side of this range. It's a cumulative zone, take it, and then embark on phase two, which is, really just an uptrend. Some cryptos are a lot further ahead. I have previously said this, and I'm going to say this again. I do think HBAR is going to play catch up. It's one of the most impressive layer ones that I personally ever came across. And I honestly think it's very much just going to mimic ADA in regards to what it did for me in the last bull market. You know, this is ADA in the last bull market, and this is, of course, HBAR. And you can see the similarities here. So whichever way you look at Hedera Hashgraph, when you look at it in the context of the broader space, which we think is going up, it's going to go up on those grounds. When you look at it in regards to how markets move, it's very much in an accumulative phase. Phase one, phase two comes after that. And when you look at it on that shorter time frame, you have that falling wedge that we ultimately think you're going to explode out of. That's going to tie in with taking you to the sort of resistance that you're currently forming in regards to this cumulative range. I do think you're going to take that, and then you're going to be embarking on an uptrend of its own. Bright things ahead, ladies and gentlemen. HBAR community, hang in there. I know it's been a tough one. I know it's been a volatile one. But when you look, for example, and let's do this. So let's just use the total cryptocurrency market cap. You know, this was the time to be accumulating throughout this period here. And this is very much where HBAR is, and it has this sort of movement ahead of it. So that is it from me, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this Hedera Hashgraph update as much as I have. I hope on the back end of all that, you can come to a bullish sort of outcome or derivative as I have. And on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks a lot for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all in the next one.